So which type of franchise should you buy? A commercial services franchise, a home services franchise, or a retail franchise? That is what you're gonna find out in this video when we compare each of these franchise types over factors that are so important to your business. Let's face it, there's a lot of things to consider before investing and becoming a business owner through a franchise. And the last thing that you wanna do is make some mistake that your family has to pay for. So that's what we're gonna do in this video. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Matt. I'm the CEO of the Assett franchise, which is the same business that initially gave me financial freedom. So we decided to franchise it so that others can copy and paste it into their market, become business owners themselves. If you want to learn more about it, check it out in the links down below. All right, so let's dive in on this first factor, which is labeled LVT, which stands for lifetime value. And that's just a fancy business term for how much do people pay you for what the business provides. When it comes to commercial service franchises like ours, you're looking at a very high lifetime value for a client. For example, here in the commercial cleaning space, a very tiny, minuscule client is going to be paying us $6,000 per year, whereas larger clients can range up into the millions of dollars per year. When it comes to home services, which I've labeled here with residential, you're looking at a medium lifetime value. And this is because most home service franchises like pest control, like plumbing or lawn care or even cleaning, they're not gonna have as large of a ticket. Most homeowners are, for example, in the cleaning world, a really high value client might pay $100 a week, maybe $200 a week. And that would be a huge residential client. Most of them just want you to come in, clean once a month, maybe it's $100, $150 or $200. So you extrapolate that over the course of a year and you're looking at approximately $2,000 to $3,000 for an average, maybe even upper end client when it comes to residential services. And now we get to retail, which is low. And this only makes sense because typically this is an ice cream shop or a frozen yogurt store or some kind of sportswear franchise or a hair salon. The transactions in these franchises are very small due to the nature of their business. And just to be clear, I'd also place restaurants in here with retail as well. So what about when it comes to how many customers each franchise type typically serves? Well, in commercial services, you're usually looking at low numbers of customers. Like in my commercial cleaning company, as a commercial services franchise, we can have an extremely successful business with less than 100 customers, even with less than 50 customers. This is because the ticket size is so high. And the nice thing about that is you don't have very many relationships to manage, which then leads to residential, and I'm actually going to put high here for residential. And this is simply because when you compare home services, you typically need 10 times the number of customers in a residential scenario than you do in a commercial scenario to be at an approximate level in the same business. Now, that's very important to be aware of because the question there becomes, that's a lot of relationships, how are they going to be handled? On the one hand, a lot of relationships may sound like it's very secure to you, right? Losing a $200 per month client when you've got 500 of those doesn't sting as much as maybe losing one client that's $2,000 a month from a book of business with 50 clients. But on the other hand, you've got customers in the home services market that'll argue for an hour to save $10 off of a bill and multiply that out by 500 customers. Whereas in the commercial world, you have a lot more professional environments and they've got budgets in place. And so it doesn't become as big of an issue. And if there is some sort of budgetary concern, it's over an amount that's significant enough to have that conversation. And what about retail with this? We're gonna go very high because you may have customers that only come to your store one time. You may have a very low proportion of repeat customers that come back. Now, ideally, the goal there is that everybody would come back to your store, right? You're trying to improve the experience and hope the product is good enough to keep them buying. Whereas with residential and commercial services, it's typically a recurring contract or a recurring service agreement that has the same people buying over and over again. That's why their lifetime value is so much higher. So in order to offset the low lifetime value in general for retail, you need you need thousands of customers to equal the same as hundreds or even tens in the commercial. That being said, there are some similarities, but also some differences compared to the residential scenario with so many clients. With retail, the purchases are a lot smaller, so they mean a lot less to people, so they're not going to be as uptight. But on the other hand, you still are dealing with the public and a lot of the public. So it's worth considering. What about when it comes to how you grow the business? And what I wanted to fit in here was marketing, but my handwriting just wasn't allowing it. Well, instead of going with low, medium, high for this category, I'm going to put in a word that specifically describes a unique part of the main growth factor for that type of franchise. Yes, within all of these, there is brand presence and recognition. Yes, there is online stuff that you can do. There are things that you can do to drive passive lead generation that bring people to your business. But there are some key differences that drive the growth between each, and this will help you determine which one is the best fit for you. When it comes to commercial services, it's called prospecting. This is where you or someone that you hire goes out and meets with businesses. They're in associations. They're becoming a part of the community, and the business community at that, with the entire goal of your company becoming known and common in the community and being easy to be found whenever somebody has a need for the services that your commercial services franchise offers. One thing I want to point out is this is not cold calling. This is not pressure sales. This is more like being a pharmaceutical rep that has something that's there to help somebody, and you're there for them whenever they need you, and you need to have that relationship established. When it comes to home services, you're looking at ad spend. Because the lifetime value of clients in the home services market are so much lower, what you do instead here, primarily that's different from all the others, is you invest more and more money into things like Facebook ads, into things like local services ads on Google's. And I'm sure there's plenty of other platforms, but it's really limited to how much noise can you get out there in the market with how much money. And that's simply because it's not worth someone's time to go door knocking door to door to door, typically in order to offer home services. Now, that's not always the case, but even if there is somebody that's doing that or there's a team that's doing that, you're still typically having a heavy spend in advertising. Now, retail is somewhat similar to ad spend, but theirs is all about promos. Promos are all about getting the word out about things like sales, discounts, events, sponsoring things, and building loyalty programs or using the loyalty programs provided by the franchise to keep people coming back or to get the word out. So what about when it comes to the investment to get started, which I have labeled here as the cost? For many commercial service franchises, you actually don't need to spend more than $100,000 at times in order to get off the ground. You can spend less than that in order to start. Now, it is worth putting in here that if somebody wants to spend more, they absolutely can, but you don't want to invest unnecessarily in getting your business going. When you look at home services, you're actually oftentimes looking at having to invest a little bit more than on the commercial side because you're having to serve so many different clients, and you might need to have more vehicles at the start, or more sets of equipment, more of many things just because of those numbers that you got to account for. Now, just like with commercial services, that is not always the case. You can absolutely find home service franchises that are less than $100,000 to get off the ground. But when it comes to retail, you're typically looking at very high investments. Yeah, maybe their franchise fee is $50,000, but you have to buy a building and you have to fit that building out and have construction done to it. And if you're not buying a building, you're signing a lease and getting contracted to pay rent for that building for a certain amount of time because you're going to be making lease improvements to it. And a large part of those improvements are the equipment that you also have to buy to put in there to provide whatever that retail space is offering. And this brings up a scalability point to keep in mind. Typically, if you're going to expand your business with the retail route, you have to reinvest, right? You got to open another store. So you have to lease another space, buy another building, retrofit that one out, get the equipment into there. Now, the other one can be operating and cash flowing, and that's great. But in order to grow, you have to spend more money. Contrast that with the two service options. Typically, you own a territory within a franchise and you expand more and more through your services in that territory. And you can, with ours, I know you can offer other lines of service and other products and all out of the same location. So you don't have to keep investing hundreds of thousands of dollars to open another location. It really just comes down to how you grow your team, how you grow with your clients and your services. Okay, last but absolutely not the least is the resilience of the business, specifically in economic situations that aren't as favorable. Because what you need to be aware of is, yes, some franchise brands are very trendy and they're very exciting and they're very new, but how will they stand up whenever the fire happens in the economy that burns out all the ones that shouldn't be there? Well, most commercial services have a very high resilience through tough economic times and recessions. And this is really due to the nature of commercial clients. Their businesses are fighting to stay open as well. They're innovating and they still need to focus on whatever they're doing to stay alive. And so the services that are offered to keep their doors open are almost essential. I can say our commercial cleaning company was essential through the pandemic. And if you look back at the history of recessions and see how the commercial cleaning industry did during those times, it was hardly a problem for those companies. They kept on going because what they do is so important. Now, not all commercial service franchises are as essential as a commercial cleaning service like ours. And there absolutely were some cases where offices did have to close down during that time, and we did lose that revenue, but it was just a scratch on the surface. It wasn't like a major loss for our company at all. So if steady income and economic resilience is important to you, the commercial services route is pretty solid. Next, we have residential. This one's going to be medium to low. The problem during economic times for home service franchises is that they're dealing with residential customers. And when things get tight in the home, they start cutting things and they're willing to get uncomfortable, or they're willing to do it themselves in their house. And the other reality is that many times the companies, in order to stay alive during tough times, will let go of individuals, which directly affects the market. And oftentimes they let go of a lot of higher paid individuals who would be paying for these kind of services, specifically the upper middle class, the middle class. They're the ones who are going to lose their jobs or are going to get decreased in their wages. And that trickles down to impacting any franchises that are serving those homes. And what about retail? This one is very mixed. It's really hard to determine an exact measurement when it comes to retail because there's such a wide variety of options from what they offer. And that's what it really boils down to. If you are really set on owning a retail style franchise, which is not a bad decision. Neither of these are bad decisions by any means. You just need to be sure that what is being sold and offered, if resilience is important to you, that product has resilience. Ultimately, it has personal importance, or it's very difficult for people to live without it. Well, there you have it. And for me personally, when I was considering leaving my job and starting a business for myself, becoming a business owner, the commercial services route appealed to me just because I like to deal with a few people that pay me a lot of money, and I'm fine with building relationships. It doesn't cost a lot of money to do that. It doesn't take an enormous amount of skill to go about and do that. The mistakes don't cost me as much either, and it was lower cost to get started. And whenever the pandemic hit during 2020 and any other economic times hit, it doesn't fluctuate nearly as much. So for me, commercial was the way to go. For you, it may be a home services franchise in the residential market, or it may be owning a retail franchise of some kind. But if commercial appeals to you, check out the links down below where you can talk to us and you can learn more about what it looks like to own an Assett franchise. And if you're not ready for that yet, you can check out the other link down below, which is a free ownership readiness assessment. You can take that and see how ready you are to become a business owner. Thanks so much for watching. Again, my name is Matt Pinkarina, the CEO of the Assett franchise. If you know somebody else that this video would help, please share it with them. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, and stay blessed.